What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here with part 2 of the Legends of Runeterra set to reveal, I guess, review on my end. We're going to keep the score the same way. I did read the comments from the last video about ways I could do it better. We'll probably do that for set 3 or something, but ultimately, I think our review scores are reasonably good anyway. So let's talk about the fact that Bilgewater has been revealed. And as of recording, we know 3 of the champions in Bilgewater right now. I'm not going to name them in case I get it wrong, because I know the others. I've also played this set before. I playtested it a while back, so there's also like things in the back of my mind where I'm like, oh, the card used to be different, and I'll hopefully not get that wrong. So I'll show those anecdotes when I can. All right, so Bilgewater, of course, gets their own poro. They get plunder poro. Now, I did read Reddit comments about this card that theoretically this wording is not super specific. Get me 2 random keywords, like theoretically ephemeral is a keyword, right? I'm going to assume it's the other like beneficial poro keywords. I don't think this ever drops as ephemeral. Honestly, it is still a 1-mana 1/1. That's generally a pretty bad card. It's a 3 or a 2. Actually, I'm going to go down to 2, honestly. This is a fairly bad card in almost all contexts. As a poro card, it's fine. I mean, so do you want 1/1 tough elusive? No. No, this is a bad card. Like, it can be a combo piece with, you know, super cool poro stuff, but like, yeah, I can't see this card actually being good. So that's where we go. I mean, maybe at some point down the line, poro decks are good, but I don't see it. All right, so let's move on to the next card. We've got Citrus Courier. All right, so Bilgewater gets... and by the way, for those who are not aware, Plunder is a mechanic that is essentially when you summon me, if you have damaged the enemy nexus this round, give me a buff. This is not retroactive. You cannot play it, then plunder and get the buff. You must have hit their nexus, then play the card afterwards. So this can never be part of your opening attack unless it was put down as you know, like you had some kind of spell effect that did it, then you get to drop it or whatever. But in general, this means that if your deck is not built around plundering very heavily, that these are going to be very hard to trigger. If you are building on plundering very heavily, you're using cards that are fairly inefficient in order to plunder, that can be fine. It can totally work. There's some really good synergies out there. I think these decks can be fine, but all right. So let's move on to Citrus Courier. It's a 6-mana 4/5. And that's it if you don't plunder, which is bad, right? It's a 3 with it's actually probably a 1 without plunder. But with plunder, if I plunder, cast Relentless Pursuit and heal all of my stuff for 3. Now, healing your nexus for 3 is not a huge deal, I don't think. I mean, it can be fine. Realistically, like this can be a card where, again, you're playing like random plunder stuff. So one thing I can see happening, by the way, because it gives rally, is if you're playing an overwhelmed deck and you've got a bunch of like 4/6s or whatever, and you hit face because one of them goes over, you drop the courier down, you get the health back on your tanky overwhelm units, and then you can go again. Like this can theoretically work in Vladimir type stuff, where right Vladimir pings his army, hits the face with his spell, and then you drop courier down and you go again with Vladimir. This allows you to replace Freljord in that kind of thing. Not saying you're definitely going to do it, but it's an option, right? So how good is 6/5, 6-mana 4/5 with Rally? Okay, well, Rally generally costs about 3. So if this is a 3-mana 4/5, it's amazing. 3-mana 4/5, heal your allies. Yep, all good stuff. That said, and even though the effects do somewhat come together pretty well, like a round 6 or 7 4/5 is fine. It's a way to get the attack. I don't know, like... This card can be amazing. I have a really hard time appreciating it. I don't know why. Like I think 6 is too low. All right, so what is it in the average case? It's probably like a 3 in the average case, where like you're not going to get it all the time, and it just is a 6-mana 4/5. If you're building a plunder deck, if you're actually plundering every single turn, you've got ways of guaranteeing that plunder happens. It's going to go down every single time. Is it a 7? I don't know. Like, maybe rallying really is that good. We'll equip it at a 7, but I don't know. Maybe rallying really is that good. I have a hard time saying yes, but realistically, like, Yeah, I don't know. My instinct is a card is garbage no matter what, but there's something positive about refilling the health of your board and going again. That's actually probably really good. So let's move on. We're going to go, and this is Warning Shot. Warning Shot is an instant 1 for the vanilla cost. It is a 0 mana burst spell, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. That is not a good card, especially not an Expedition unless you're playing a Plunder deck, which thankfully Expeditions let you do, which is cool. Inconstructed, is it a combo piece? Yes. Is it a good combo piece? Well, it guarantees you can Plunder, which has a lot of value. I think we're just going to kind of keep our default of, hey, give it a 7 when it's a combo piece. That said, I'd say there are probably better combo pieces. There are probably better ways of guaranteeing or having incredibly likely plunder, because this still costs you a card. You are still discarding a card to do this. Now there are other combos. As we go down the line, we'll see things like Gangplank that's quite good that can synergize here. But in general, I don't think this is an auto include. I think this is so expensive on a per card basis that I think it's not great. But I like, to be clear with an asterisk here, I would not be shocked if this ended up being a 3 of in every plunder deck. Like it could be the case just because you really, really, really want the reliability, but it is discard a card to get plunder, which is weak. It can also be good in an Ezreal deck, right? This is a 0 mana spell for Ezreal. A 0 mana burst spell is the exact thing Ezreal wants. So there is a chance we're doing Ezreal Bilgewater is the new Ezreal combo, and Warning Shot is just like an obvious 3 of, and it's sick. That's totally possible as well. All right, let's move on to the next card, which is Smooth Soloist, a 7 mana 3/4 elusive. Ouch. Yeah, I mean, that's probably also a 1. I mean, much like Citrus Courier is, yeah, I mean, this is just like, it's very, very weak. Yeah. But okay, it has an effect, obviously. If you can plunder, reduce the cost of allies in your hand and deck by 2. So if you have, let's say, 3 units in hand, this gets you 6 mana back. Keep in mind, no one plays Mobilize. Mobilize costs 2 mana and is a unit. Costs 2 mana and is a spell and reduces your hand by 1. And actually would let you cheat out things like Tryndamere early, but people still don't play that deck. This doesn't really let you get big units early. This at best gets a 10 drop down on 8. Now, is a 10 drop down on 8 very good in this very specific case? Well, yeah, of course, right? Getting They Who Wander down on 8 and like ruining your entire opponent is good, obviously. Getting to play a 6 mana Tryndamere so that you can combo and stuff is good. Like, yes, absolutely. Is this amazing? Is this the sickest? Is there a way to combo this? And so just to be very clear about this, I'm pretty certain that Plunder is indeed summon and not play. So you could Smooth Soloist, and then anytime you Plunder, you can not Rekindler. It's the 4 mana 3/3 that kills the unit and revives it. So you can like play that on Soloist at a later round, and you get another version of this. I think a lot of the value of this card is, in fact, let's still call it like a 4. I'm still not super. I'm gonna stick with 3 actually. I don't think this is actually necessarily amazing. I think your hands are often empty in Plunder decks because you're using a lot of cheap spells to trigger Plunder. That I don't think you're gonna get a ton of value out of this. Now it's going to be good in cases where you're playing the ships. As we've seen, there's a couple of there are like 8 rough mana cost epic ships that bring a unit into your hand. This makes the ships good, right? Because now the ship costs 6 and the champion costs 4, and now you can play them both. Like, those combos exist, and that's where this is actually good. Is it makes drawing the ship incredible. That's where the real power is. That, as well as resummoning this unit. Now, it may still be too slow and too difficult to do, but I can see this card being okay in those respects. I think it's still overall weak, but yeah, well, I think there's some chance for some really, really good shenanigans where you can get mass drawing and then pop off. Yeah, well, based on what we know, right? Like, if there's a bunch of like really good draw effects somewhere else, right? If Bilgewater can draw as well as Piltover and Zon can with Rummage and Progress Day, but otherwise you're like forced to play this with Piltover and Zon. If Bilgewater can draw as well as Piltover and Zon, then this is a better card, right? But Right now, I don't think we've seen a little bit, right? Because there's the what toss 2 draw 2, which is further down the line. It's part of the Nautilus set. Right, if there's like another card like that, then this is actually a much better card. But with just that, I'm not sure I'm about it. But we'll see. Next up, we have Jagged Taskmaster. It is a 3-mana 4/3. All right, pass the vanilla test automatically. But if you plunder, grant 1-cost allies everywhere +1/+0 forever. So this is, you get your spam of tokens down. This buffs up Fizz, by the way, who is a little bit further down the line as a 1-mana champion. It does buff them in the deck. Theoretically, you could maybe play Ionia with 3 of this card to buff your 1-drops. This is good with poros as well, because a lot of poros are 1-drops. There's a world where this is good. It's still pretty niche. We'll still keep the vanilla score at 6, just because it is better than a pure vanilla. As a combo piece, I don't think it's incredible. I don't think this card ever really super shines. I mean, there is a chance that there is a sick weenie deck with a million card draw and we're actually amazing, but I just don't see it. But who knows, right? Maybe it's possible. Next up, we get the first half of the Stormclaw Ursine we talked about before. Ursine Spirit Walker is a 5-mana 4/6. Well, the stat line's not bad, but it's obviously suboptimal, so it's a default, it's a 4. But if you plunder, obviously it turns into a sick card, so it's automatically the exact same stats as Stormclaw Ursine, where, look, if you get it, right, then you're this. And this is obviously incredible, right? 6/6 Overwhelm, give other allies Overwhelm is definitely incredible. Right? So now you get it by playing a Vladimir deck, right? Where Vladimir pings face, you get the plunder effect, you drop Stormclaw Spirit Walker, or you drop Ursine Spirit Walker, you get Stormclaw Ursine, and then you pop off. So, yeah, definitely really cool. Alrighty, so here is the Tusk Raider. The Tusk Raider is plunder. Double the power and health of allies in your deck, and then draw Sejuani. Now again, Tusk Raider goes from 8 cost to 6 cost if you can get the hit in with Smooth Soloist. And then, if you can plunder down the line, you can play the 6-mana Tusk Raider. You double the power of allies in your deck and health, so that means you're going to double up the power and health of Sejuani. You're then going to draw Sejuani. I believe Sejuani was a 6-drop, so she now only costs 4. That's quite good. That said, it is an 8-mana 7/7 draw card. That's okay, right? That's fine. That's maybe a little bit like this. It's maybe a 6. But if you can reliably plunder, your deck power is incredible. Obviously, one thing to point out is this has positive synergy with Avaros and Hearthguard, where you're going to play Hearthguard on 5 or 6 or 7, maybe all 3. Give everyone +3/+3 or +1/+1, somewhere between those. And then those buffs are then further doubled by the Tusk Raider. Yeah, this is amazing. This is another case where it's like, man, I really wish you could get some more card draw. Freljord has very, very little. They have Entreat. They have this, but it's not a ton. And again, Bilgewater is the one that makes everything cheap, right? If you go up back to Smooth Soloist, this is what makes everything cheap. But man, wouldn't it be fun to get a Bilgewater Freljord, hit face combo together and start drawing some really absurd stuff. There's obviously Plunder synergies up in Freljord. There's Plunder synergies over in Bilgewater. There's Plunder synergies over in Noxus. There's a lot of them in a bunch of different places. We saw a bunch of Noxus cards that hit Nexus. They didn't have Plunder on them, but they enabled Plunder. So, yeah, I mean, optimal case, it's probably an 8. I think it's more than just a combo piece. This is a game winner. This doesn't do the game winning for you, but it gets you most of the way there. This is overall a pretty good card. It's very good on Expeditions because it's a free card draw, as long as you can have a Sejuani in your deck somewhere. If you can trigger Plunder, yeah, you're in a really good spot. This card seems pretty decent. And then we get a 4-mana 4/3 Overwhelm, which is pretty bad. But if you plunder, you gain mana. I don't super love the synergy, by the way. So it is more ramp for Freljord, which is super cool. I am very happy that there's more ramp in Freljord. I'm super a fan of that. I'm a big fan. However, I'm not sure this card fits. So you need to hit on 3. Well, actually, you either, you need to open attack on 4. not have to spend any mana to make the attack work, and then have Wolfrider hit. Because the later this hits, right? The later this card hits the deck or hits the board, the less mana you're getting, right? If you're hitting this on round 7, you're getting bonus mana on 8 and 9. Who cares? If this will give you, it's just not relevant, right? If this hits the deck, if this hits the board on round 4, it gives you bonus mana on 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's worth 5 mana. Then it's an amazing card. If it hits on 6, you're getting on 7, 8, 9. Like, you know, like the window where this card is good is very limited. And it's not like, you know, Tusk Raider here, where it's like, yeah, I can wait a round or two because once it pops, we're in a great spot and we're going to win the game. This is very time limited, and if you are not already curving out amazingly, this card is not good. So I still put this as below average at the below average mark, because how are you playing a ramp deck that also hits early? How are you reliably plundering on 4? Yeah, again, there's that card up there. There's Warning Shot, which guarantees you get the plunder effect, and so Wolfrider comes down, right? If, you know, in the magical world where you double Warning Shotted, it dropped all your 3/2s, Wolfrider comes down, you swing, like, hey, great, you know, good job. But this card honestly feels weak. Maybe it really is okay just to play on 6. You know, on round 6, you drop Wolfrider, you get a body, it gets you to 8 mana so that you can play your ship sooner. Like, maybe that really does work. You know, and we go back to the smooth soloist combo. Like, maybe there's something there, and there really might be, right? There really could be this weird plunder, deck buff, shenanigans, mana gain, like, you know, we're heavy zoo with plunder. Like, maybe that deck really does exist. It's one thing to try out. I could see it, but it feels tenuous. But it does have the synergy, right? Like, it has overwhelm, so it could further trigger plunder down the line. We'll see. Alrighty, we have our first new champion, and it is Fizz. Hopefully I didn't... I'm not sure if I didn't scroll down enough before, by the way. Here's the score lines. Sorry, I was blanking on that. So my bad if you weren't seeing those numbers earlier. Okay, so Fizz, level 1. He is a 1-mana 2/1, which is fine. I mean, I still don't really like 1-drops very much in this game. They don't do specific things that aren't just, you know, bodies. But when you cast a spell, give me elusive and stop all enemy spells targeting me. Now notice, it says spells, not skills, so you cannot dodge Avarosan Marksman. Want to point that out real quick. If there is a character skill that would kill this, it still kills it. If the spell is an AoE like Avalanche or Withering Wail, it will also kill it. Also, I believe this will completely remove Static Shock because it stops enemy spells that are targeting it. So I think it completely denies Static Shock. Could be wrong. Think it's true though. Okay, that's actually pretty good, right? That is solid. I mean, I really can't go much above 5 because it's still like, okay, it's a 2/1 that doesn't die, but who cares the 2/1, right? So I think I really can't go above vanilla for level 1. As a common piece where it's happening really reliably, great, sure, it's still like at most a 6, where it's just like a 2/1 elusive for 1 as like a flat out card is pretty good, right? It's not the most incredible thing ever, but yeah, okay, it is a 2/1 elusive. Okay, it's fine. All right, but level 2 Fizz. All right, level 2 Fizz is a 1-mana 3/2, which can gain elusive, which is obviously pretty amazing. 1-mana 3/2 elusive is an incredible card. As a combo piece, you know, it's 8 or a 9. When you cast a spell, give me elusive, stop enemies still targeting me, so that effect is still the same. It's still the same sort of trickster. But Nexus Strike, create a Chum the Waters. So you put a card into your hand when this 3/2 hits Nexus. Now, the level condition is play 6 spells this game. That's not that hard to do, especially when you look at the stuff that Ionia does, right? There's obvious Lee Sin synergy, where he wants you to cast 7 spells this game. Yeah, Fizz and Lee Sin are going to be level 2 pretty reliably in a deck like this. Fizz is going to be elusive, Lee Sin's going to channel stuff. Yeah, this can work pretty well, especially if you're doing a lot of spells that summon units to keep your board pretty full. This could be pretty nice. There's a real sort of deck kind of showing up here where it's just like play a few spells and we're in there. Heimer would be out of faction, but we'll see. But yeah, I mean that's a probably solid 7 or 8. I mean as a card, would I like Fizz in my deck kind of at most times? Yeah, this is a good card. Okay. What is Playful Trickster? Well, it is something that you can main deck. It is a fast spell. Actually, sorry, Chum the Waters. Okay, so we're gonna get Chum the Waters in a second. Chum the Waters is farther down. Let's do Chum the Waters first, okay? So Chum the Waters is a 4-mana slow spell that grants an enemy vulnerable and summons a 5/1 Overwhelm. This is interesting, right? Because not only is this potentially removal, now it's very slow, right? I play a slow spell, I pass priority, I then go into combat, you can then use combat tricks. This takes a long time. This has a lot of warning to it. But it is a slow spell this spell is basically ultra slow Final Spark, right? Instead of 4 damage Overwhelm, it's 5 damage Overwhelm. And you require it to be doing it in combat, which is obviously a pretty big deal. Also to point out, Fizz Nexus Strikes doesn't rally, creates a spell that kind of needs you to be able to attack to do anything. Now, it grants the enemy vulnerable forever. It is not for this turn. They are just simply vulnerable as a unit. And Longtooth is not ephemeral, which means you can just simply play Chum the Waters whenever you want and get a 5/1 blocker and then use, like, Lee Sin to level 2 Dragon Rage whatever he hits, right? I am going to assume, I'm not certain about this, that if you attack a vulnerable unit, that counts as challenging them. That is not a guarantee. That is a belief. I'm not sure, right? It's not the same word, but it's the same kind of mechanic. So who knows? Chum, so yeah, we'll go with the Playful Trickster real quick before we finish reviewing that. Actually, we'll just do Chum the Water since we were talking about it already. This is okay. I don't think it's amazing, but it's a card that you generate for free. Do I really care about a 4-mana 5/1 Overwhelm Challenger kind of? Not really, not at that kind of speed. I can play it for spell mana, which is nice, don't get me wrong. The fact that it is a spell obviously helps Fizz. Like, there's combo there. Maybe it's a 6 as a combo piece, but I don't think it's the sickest card ever. It's serviceable, but I think it's actually maybe more like a 3 as a default card, but it has some synergy. All right, then we go to Playful Trickster. Playful Trickster is not Fizz's spell. It is just... actually, it could be, right? It's probably Fizz's Playful Trickster, but Nexus Strike makes Chum the Waters. Okay, so it's probably Fizz's spell. So if you have an extra copy of Fizz, you get Playful Trickster. Playful Trickster is remove an attacking ally from combat and rally. Okay, so it is Relentless Pursuit that only works on offense. It only works while you're attacking, and it removes that attacking unit from combat. That can be interesting. It can be good if you're, let's say, I don't know, using Callista or something, and they're gonna kill her, like, linked target, and you want to get rid of it. I feel like this is... Okay, so what this basically does, right, is it allows you to play around combat tricks by saying, ooh, that's bad, let me back off of that one. You're going to do too much here. You know, maybe you challenge their 12/12 lifesteal, and then you Playful Trickster, and the lifesteal's not hitting anything anymore. It is a way to play around lifesteal, of course, but so would Frostbite. Removing an attacking ally from combat to rally. I'm sure there's something here. I mean, it is rally, which is nice. Keep in mind that we know there are a couple of units that have good, like, start of combat offensive triggers. Again, we know, like, Noxus and Piltover and Zon both have, when I attack, deal 1 to the Nexus. You can do that and then Playful Trickster them back so they stay alive. This lets you hide away from Garen. This lets you hide away from Fiora if she blocks. This lets you hide from... who's another good blocker that I really care about? I mean, Thresh can matter, but there's one I'm thinking of and I'm just like, it's not in my head right now. It's not that important, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, there's things that, like, you definitely want to dodge away from sometimes. So, okay. This still feels kind of mediocre, honestly. This feels so difficult to use. It is objectively worse than Relentless Pursuit. Now, Relentless Pursuit's an amazing card. This is just a bad Relentless Pursuit in most cases. As a combo piece, is it super sick? I mean, so in a combo scenario, it's at worst Pursuit. So, I mean, it's probably okay, but I don't know. I don't see why I should love this right now. It dodges the Draven spell. It dodges Whirling Death because you're no longer in combat, so you don't get hit anymore. So there's some things, right? But I'm still not a huge fan. Okay, let's move on. Shell Shocker. So we get a new keyword, and that is attune. Attune says when you summon me, refill 1 spell mana. It is a 1-drop. It is a 1 mana. It is a 1 mana 2/1 that then refills 1 spell mana. So much like I'm blanking on the Piltover and Zon card. That's a 2 mana 2/1 that refills 2 spell mana. It's the bite-sized version of this card, which is honestly fine. Like, I think it's actually totally okay. It lets you put a unit on the board while still letting you play spells on curve, which is pretty nice. It's overall solid. This could definitely just exist a lot in the deck. This is just not like it's not a game winner, so I can't really reliably put it that high. Even a 0 mana 2/1 is not that amazing of a card, but just getting bodies on board can be really useful. Just because you can cheat things out, right? Imagine getting to play like a bunch of 2/1s and then still playing like the 5/5 on 3 or any other like really good spell summon card. Just getting to sort of curve out, and especially when you look at like what Fizz does and what Lee Sin does, you're kind of an aggro deck. This is actually kind of an aggro card because it's a 0 mana 2/1. That's an aggro card kind of by nature. Next up, Coral Creatures, like 2 mana 1/2 that also attunes. Okay, but when I'm summoned, create a random 1-cost spell in hand. Okay, so it is a 1 mana 1/2 in total cost that draws a card. 1 mana 1/2 draw card is a great card. Yeah, it's a really small card, but it's still a card. That card is good. I think this card is quite incredible. Obviously, it has direct Fizz synergy because Fizz wants you to cast spells. It gives you the mana to cast the spell. It has some direct Lee Sin synergy as well for the same reasons. But it gives you spells to play. That is good. It is a random 1-cost spell, which means you can get some really garbage ones like Absorb Soul in most decks. I don't know if it's a random 1-cost spell from your region. Usually it is, by the way, but random sometimes gets out of region. I know this because there probably is a consistent ruling here that I just don't know. And that's on me for not knowing it. Like, I know Ionian Invocation is within region, right? If Coral Creatures worded the same way as Ionian Invocation, then you're sticking with Piltover or whatever, or like Ionia and Bilgewater. But even if it's not, like, okay, then you're not going to Absorb Soul. That's a positive. That probably makes it a better card. Still a very good card. I think this card is very good. I think this is like, I would run this card for sure, even if I'm not playing a Fizz deck. All right, then we got Bubble Bear, and oof. So Bubble Bear is a 0/6 elusive attune. So it is kind of a 2 mana 0/6, and it's a 2 mana 0/6 elusive, meaning it can block Solitary Monk once or twice. It can block a bunch of elusives a few times, and again, it is a 2 mana 0/2. I still can't, and even if your opponent isn't elusive, it still blocks, Draven once or twice. It blocks Jinx once or twice. It's a slower card. It's okay. You can also choose to buff it. This is something you can bring along when you're like playing Playful Trickster and attack with it and just pull it out of combat because who cares? It's fine, but it is a card that by nature does nothing. Like, if this card was Mystic Shot, it would just kill the Greenglade duo. Instead, you play a 2 mana card that just defends against the Greenglade duo twice. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Maybe it's good. Maybe there's, really good ways to buff this if you have really good I mean, like, this is okay with deck buff, I suppose, right? Where if, let's say, you're playing really, really spell heavy and you're doing Bilgewater Freljord and you're using the 2 mana 2/3 that when you play a spell, buff the top card in your deck by +1/+1, and you get like 6 spells off, and this thing is a 6/12. Anything with +6/+6 is great. But it's not even that big of a threat, right? Even if you buff it with +3 damage, it's still only ever doing 3 per every other round. It's just not that good. I don't see myself ever wanting to run this card. Then we go into Nautilus, the second champion revealed. Let's scroll down to make sure we're not missing it. The second champion revealed in Bilgewater is Nautilus. It is a 7 mana 0/12 fearsome tough. That is obviously pretty garbage. And, even if you can give it, +8, +4 with the Freljord buff, with Battle Fury, yeah, no, right? Like, this is level 1 Nautilus is obviously a garbage card. It's just bad, right? There's no reason you would play level 1 Nautilus on purpose. Now, obviously, levels up when you're deep. When he levels up, put tossed allies that cost 4 or more into your deck. That's all part of level 2 Nautilus. But what I'm trying to say is, if you cannot level up Nautilus, Nautilus is absolute garbage. Absolute garbage. You are deep when you have 15 or less cards left in your deck. Now, I want to point out that if you're playing Expeditions and your deck starts at 30 cards, that condition has not changed. It is still 15 cards left in your deck, which means Nautilus as your first champion Expeditions is stronger than later on in Expeditions because your deck is 6 cards lighter. And Expedition decks in general are only ever 36 cards at most. And that's if you're getting past 3 wins. So Nautilus is a really good way to guarantee your first few wins come through, which is pretty cool. I actually think that's kind of cute because you only have to draw 10 cards from round 1. Like Nautilus is automatically deep at level 11 at the beginning of an expedition. That's kind of amazing, right? Okay, so again, levels up when you're deep, and when you level up, copy tossed allies, right? Things that you discarded from the bottom of your deck earlier on, back into your deck in a random location. So 4 drops and up. Put 4 drops and up back in. Okay, so when we level up Nautilus, he is a 7 mana 13/13. Yep. Great card. Is fearsome, so you can't chump block it. Sea Monsters is a subclass of unit. So you now grab a bunch of 4+ cost allies that you can now start drawing again. They all cost 4 less, so they cost between 0 and 6 mana. And Bilgewater could really, really hope they can start drawing these things. I mean, at worst, they're in your hand waiting to be played. You flip Nautilus and you just jam a bunch of 7-drops that cost 3. Yeah, oh my, as soon as Nautilus flips, you're flooding the board with gigantic units that are going to crush things. This seems great. Yes, I'm giving it a 10. You've made incredible draw synergy. Keep in mind that again, we're gonna use Maokai as our example, right? So Maokai levels up when you have tossed/lost 25 cards. Nautilus levels up when you have drawn/tossed 25 cards from a constructed sort of level. They will level up at about the same time, roughly so. We already saw from the Maokai situation that you could maybe curve out to maybe round 7 or 8 in in a pretty good case. Let's just say you're actually getting Nautilus to level up on 7. You play him on 7. You get your deck value back, right? You had churned 25 cards out of your deck. You now add, let's say, 10 back in. So of your 15 cards, 10 are guaranteed to be good draws. Your card quality is incredibly high now. Yeah, this sounds amazing, right? This sounds absolutely incredible. You don't have to run him with Maokai, by the way. It's interesting because, again, while Nautilus and Maokai will level up at similar amounts of times, when Nautilus flips, do you really need to put the game on a 5-round clock, or are you just happy to have Nautilus? They have the same trigger, and yet you don't need both win conditions in most cases. It's kind of fine regardless. It does let you slam 2 more good bodies down to make sure you stabilize on rounds 8, 9, 10. But you don't need to play Nautilus Maokai, even though they obviously have some direct synergy. They help each other level up. They don't help each other win, if that makes sense. Because they're also both dead cards until the win condition happens, right? Maokai and Nautilus are both entirely dead until the flip condition. And then they're 10s, roughly. All right, Riptide is Nautilus's spell. It is a fast stun an enemy. Great. That's at least a 6. That's a great card. Fast stun an enemy. And shuffle that unit into the enemy's deck if there's an ally Nautilus. And that means on the board, right? So what's interesting is if you can play this before Maokai levels up, if it's a champion card, it will guaranteed be discarded from their deck or obliterated from their deck. In general, even if you're not doing Maokai stuff, it is still 4 mana, essentially delete the card, right? Instead of it just being stunned, it is 4 mana vengeance, basically. Yes, they can redraw it, but it is still a card gone. That is amazing. It's maybe even a 9. This is a great card overall. This is maybe one of the very, very best champion spells that could exist. This is absurd amounts of value. Yeah, this is truly amazing. I mean, no matter what, whatever you stun can't defend, but the fact that it's gone for nearly ever is just incredible. Super, super good. All right, next up we go to Jettison. 1 mana burst, toss 4, instant 1. Right, this does nothing if you're not playing a toss synergy deck. Absolutely does nothing. Absolutely horrible card. Is it worth running in a toss deck? I'm gonna say no. And this is debatable, right? This really depends on how a toss deck works, right? Obviously, tossing gets you to Maokai. It also gets you to Nautilus. It gets you to deep, right? Deep and toss go hand in hand, obviously. We'll talk about deep later on once we start talking about those cards specifically. But do you care about this? Now, I want to point out, by the way, that tossing does not improve draw quality unless you're playing level 2 Nautilus. Because it is removing the bottom cards of your deck, and if you remove the bottom 20 cards of your deck, the top 20 haven't changed, and your first 20 draws of the game are no different. Which is the first 15 rounds of the game if you're not running any native card draw. Games don't go for 15 rounds. This does nothing. This does literally nothing for card quality. In fact, it also bleeds information. If Toss does tell you in the feed what's been destroyed, I don't remember if it does. It also tells your opponent what you don't have in hand. Because if you ever see this like Toss 2 Mystic Shots, you're like, oh, well, I guess I'm literally never gonna have Mystic Shot this game. I'll only ever have one at most. So like that can be valuable. Yeah. So there is something there, right? Yes, with Nautilus it's better. Do I still want to discard a card to level up Nautilus sooner? I mean, maybe we'll call this like it's maybe a 5. And again, much like the earlier card, right? Like this is yet another card that is a burst speed and incredibly cheap and clearly plays into a level up condition, right? Or there's a 0 mana plunder burst a little while ago. There's Jettison here, but I'm willing to bet that there are better cards that toss or make tokens or discard or draw or whatever and are worth running over Jettison. But maybe, right? Like maybe it's really worth having this in hand, and when you're 3 from deep and your opponent attacks and you go, whoop, I flipped Nautilus, then it's good, right? Maybe it's good as a combat trick there. You turn on deep. Deep gives allies who are deep +3/+3. Bam, suddenly you buff the entire board. Isn't that cool? The threat of Jettison existing, by the way, having a burst speed toss 4 is huge. I think in the long run, if deep decks are good, if toss decks are good, the threat of having Jettison is good. I want to point out, though, that Jettison is a card that if we scroll up, coral creatures can produce. Coral creatures can give you Jettison because they're both Bilgewater. That is objectively one of the worst things you could possibly get. So, hey, keep that in mind. I think it's still bad. Right, so now we go into the things that I think are actually good, right? Dredgers. It's a 1 mana 2/1, which is a bad card. I'll probably put it at a 3. I really don't think 1 mana 2/1s are good without doing anything special. But when I'm summoned, toss 3. Yeah, good enough for me to care. I mean, it's still an overall 3. It is only a combo card, right? It is only good in toss decks. It is overall still a 3. Compared to things like Fizz, where it's like it's better with synergy, but it's still an okay card. This is the kind of thing you want, right? When we talked about Maokai earlier on, there's a 2-drop that tosses, there's a 3-drop that tosses, there's a 4-mana spell that draws cards and tosses. It is also a unit, which is good, so this is actually worth 4, right? This is 1/6 of Maokai's level up. It tosses 3 and then dies. That's worth 4 of 25. Yeah, absolutely incredible, right? A Maokai deck has toss cards on curve, and they're all in Shadow Owls and Bilgewater, which obviously, again, asks you to play Nautilus, but you don't have to, but you might. Yeah, super great. I think it's a simple card, but I think it's a very good card for what it wants to do, right? This is, I think, an absolute auto-include in toss decks. Okay, we now get into the actual deep cards. The Beast Below is a 4-mana 4/4, which is mediocre, but it's not horrible. It's only slightly fails the vanilla test. when it is deep, it is a 7/7. It is a 4-mana 7/7. And remember, if Nautilus is in play, it is a 0-mana 7/7. I am glad that 4-mana 7/7 is a meme in card games. I just want to, I want to keep having them. I love 4-mana 7/7s. What a great card. Yeah, I mean, this is solid, right? This is a card you'll probably include. What's nice is, I mean, this is acceptable to play on curve, right? It is acceptable to play this card on curve and just have a 4-mana 4/4. It's good enough. It's fine. And then you discard enough cards down the line, and it's a 7/7 now, right? This is the better version of all the Enlightened cards. Because if you are playing any deep synergy at all, you'll be deep before an Enlightened player is Enlightened. Almost always. Now, the Enlightened effects are +4/+4, right? Karma doubles your spells. Like, the actual Enlightened cards are better than the deep cards. Once accentuated. But this is a card that is going to get, shuffled back into your deck. If you can get a bunch of card draw by doing, Bilgewater plus PZ and getting a bunch of 0-mana sea monsters that you just slam onto the deck, like, that is great. That is absolutely great. Here's the card I was talking about, by the way. Here is Salvage, right? Salvage is a 4-mana burst spell, draw 2, toss 2. Also, technically, it's toss first. So in a case where your deck is down to 5 cards and it's 3 champions and 2 crappy cards, it kills the crappy cards and guarantees you draw a champion. Draws 2 champions. That's a good thing, right? This is worded in a favorable way where if you are down to the top 2 cards being the only non-champions left in your deck, it will be positive. But again, this literally only matters if the top 2 cards in your deck are non-champions. Or if the only non-champion cards left in your deck are 2 at the very top. Otherwise, the wording is fairly irrelevant. But cool. 4-mana burst, draw 2 is good. Keep in mind, Rummage made you discard 2 cards and cost 3 less. Progress Day costs 4 more, but makes things cheaper and gives you an extra card. I mean, this is cool, right? This, as a card, right, thins your deck by 4, right? Discard 2, draw 2 is as much as Jettison in terms of getting closer to being deep, right? This is a card that costs 4 and gets you 4 closer to deep. So your 40 card deck is a 36 card deck. By the time you're playing this on like round 3, you've already drawn 7 cards. Now you've already drawn 11 cards. There's only 29 left in your deck without doing anything for tossing. This is, of course, absolutely great. This is another card that you will hold on to. And this is actually the card that you'll actually hold on to, right? Like, Jettison is cool and everything, but it's bad. This is actually great, right? This is automatically good, and we'll keep it as an 8. I don't think it's quite a 9, but it's a very good card. This card is worth playing in and of itself. 4-mana draw 2 is fine. Especially at burst speed, I think it's totally okay. I think this is a card that you can just play. You can just have. It's totally reasonable. And here is the card draw, right? Here is the card draw that Bilgewater needs in order to play this kind of stuff. This allows you to have your level up Nautilus come down on the board, right? Flips, drops things into drops your good units back into your deck, and you start drawing them, and they're really cheap, and they get to slam back onto the board. Very, very good stuff. I like this a lot. Cool stuff. I'm a fan. Good card. Shipwreck Hoarder, another sea monster, right? So again, 4 mana cheaper of Nautilus level 2 means it's a 3 mana card. Okay, so it is a 7 mana 7/5. Let's scroll up to there. Great. 7 mana 7/5. Deep. When I'm summoned, toss 2 and shuffle 2 treasures into your deck. Okay, so it is a 7 mana 7/5, toss 2, and shuffle treasures. And once again, this is a card where it is a summon effect, so if you want to kill and reanimate it with Shadow Isles tricks, you absolutely can. That is probably a very good thing. We already know that Maokai and Nautilus have some level of synergy, which means you're in Shadow Isles a lot of the time with his deck. The game is obviously like telling you very directly, like, hey, by the way, do you want to try Sea Monster Maokai Nautilus deck? Because could be good. Toss 2 and then shuffle 2 treasures into your deck. And the treasures actually also work when tossed, by the way, which is cool. Okay, so also it's 7/5 deep, so it can be a 10/8. Okay, but again, the vanilla test is pretty bad, right? It's actually probably down here at like a 3. It is a bad stat line for its cost. You have a chance of drawing the treasures, but because you're playing this on 7, you have to then have drawn the cards you care about. It needs to show up. By the way, the treasures going into your deck technically slow down deep because they're cards going back into your deck, so it actually slows down its own win condition a little bit, just a little bit. As a combo piece, right? It comes down with Nautilus. Yeah, solid. I know we're mostly just averaging here with the overall, but I think it's still reasonably true. I think it's like, hey, how common is the synergy? Not that uncommon, to be honest. And again, pointing out once again that if you're playing this in expeditions, on round 7, you will have drawn, I think, 11 cards so far, which means your deck is down to 19. You play this to toss 2, your deck is down to 17. If you play Sea Monster on curve, you're already practically deep in almost any realistic scenario. Also keep in mind that, like, even if you are playing constructed, you only need to, like, have tossed 12 by this point to be deep. That's also fairly realistic. Drawn or tossed. So this is very frequently coming down on curve, leveled up. Same with Nautilus, realistically. There's enough synergy that if you're playing a toss deck, like, these are going to come down at the appropriate level. It's a 7-mana 10-5, or 10-8, which is actually quite good. We'll give it an 8 in a synergy, for synergy. Okay. So here are the treasure troves, by the way, that we'll start talking about. Okay, so shovel 2 treasures into your deck after tossing. Treasure trove is one of them. If I'm tossed, draw me instead. Okay, so if you can toss this, it's free drawing, which is quite good. I believe, by the way, that this actually has a lot of positive synergy. So think about it this way, right? Let's say you've tossed 20 cards. Okay, so your deck has 20. And so you have tossed the bottom 20 cards of your deck, which means, like, the bottom 3 are, like, so there's, like, a top 15, and the bottom 3 are guaranteed to be champions. So of the 18 cards, the bottom 3 are guaranteed to be champions. When you shuffle a treasure randomly into your deck, it can go in any one of those 19 spots, right, above or below any given card. If you toss, if it picked below any one of those champions, it is guaranteed to be tossed. So by nature, by tossing, shuffling cards back into your deck makes them more likely to be tossed. Now, that is mathematically true, and the rate is actually pretty reasonable. It's probably like 2 or 3x as likely to be tossed, which means you are very, very likely, after doing this, or at least more likely than normal, to catch these in the toss. Even if, 80% of your deck is still non-champions, this is going to have a higher toss rate because it can slot back down to the bottom. That's going to get searched through first again. If I'm tossed, draw me instead. Great. Slow 5-mana spell. Create 5 random cards in hand. They are 0 cost and fleeting. Once again, I'm not sure if this randomness requires you to be in the same region or not, but 5 random 0 cost spells is exactly what a Nautilus deck wants, because it already has all these really, really cheap sea monsters that it just wants to, slam down. Now it's got all these random spells that cost 0 that you want to slam down. I mean, it's very, very good at just jamming cards out of your hand and overwhelming your opponent. You're overwhelming your opponent with things that are likely very, very good. Now, they are fleeting. If this is, something really obnoxious like the Harrowing and your board is full, sorry, the card is dead. You might as well play it and attack with your 1 unit. If it's Ruination, if you've got some refill, sure, I guess, but it's going to kill Nautilus and your minion's going to be expensive again. But theoretically, so it can give you dead cards. There are bad cards that do nothing, but could be quite nice. But again, you can choose when to play this so that you can, make sure you care a little bit more. But it's 5 random cards. They could be units. They could be units you can't afford. Like this costs 5 and could give you They Who Endure, She Who Wanders, which is just like not playable, right? Because you don't have the mana for it. So possibilities, right? Still, though, in general, very good card, right? Obviously, you could play this card if you could. Keelbreaker, 5 mana slow spell. If I'm tossed, draw me instead. Same as before. Deal 5 to all units. Well, you will tend to have your unit survive. It's basically just big avalanche. It's +3 spell power avalanche. This is decent, right? This is decently strong. This clears the way to make sure that your stuff can hit face. In general, your stuff will live. In general, their stuff will die. Yeah, it works in the case of, that's what you've got. And again, you're getting 2 random treasures. You're getting, one of these. You're getting 2 of these 3. You're only actually skipping 1. Then we have Plate Worm Egg. If I'm toss, draw me instead. Summon 3 Vicious Plate Worms. And a Vicious Plate Worm is a 5 mana, 5/5 fearsome deep. Very, very likely by the time this card is resolved, you will be deep. So most of the time, it is summon 3 8/8 fearsomes. That is a very, very good card. Yes, this costs 5, but 5 mana to summon 3 8/8 fearsomes, even summon 3 5/5 fearsomes, is very, very good. Very strong card. These treasures are amazing. They can absolutely win the game. Super, super big fan. Definitely good stuff. Definitely, definitely good. If you can manage to dig these cards back out, but a lot of the time they won't. I still think this is going to be too unreliable to play in and of itself. I think you can do better things on 7. So I still think it's a weak card unless you're getting deep. Alrighty, the third revealed champion in Bilgewater is Gangplank. And Gangplank is a 5 mana 5/5. That when I'm summoned, summons a powder keg. It's a 5 mana 5/5 overwhelm that summons a powder keg when he's summoned. Okay, that's decent. He summons a powder keg. We're going to scroll down for what a powder keg does real quick. Where is the powder keg? There it is. Powder kegs cannot fight, and they are vulnerable, so they can be auto-attacked. People can just hit them with whatever their thing is. Powder kegs stack. So you'll have just a stack of like 7 powder kegs. All your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage, but destroy me when your spell or skill damages enemies. So your avalanche is going to deal 3 or 4 or 5. That 5 damage nuke all that we had a little while ago, 7 damage nuke all, right? This thing can be killed. It is very, very frail. Again, it has vulnerable, so they can challenge it. And then you destroy it when the spell is killed. Yeah. But you can stack up some of the big spell power, which, by the way, think about some of the skills that matter, right? So, destroy me when your spell or skill damages enemies. So, for example, if you wanted to Grasp of the Undying your own unit, it deals extra damage but doesn't damage enemies. It will be worth more without killing powder kegs. Also, in general, any sort of buff that or any spell effect or unit effect that just hits the extra 1 instead of round, it's going to deal 3 instead of 1 and then consume the powder kegs. There's lots of ways to consume powder kegs in bad ways to do nothing, but there's lots of ways to do it really well as well. Think about things like it's kind of funny, right? Because when Swain hits the Nexus, he deals 3 to all enemies. So if you can somehow give Swain elusive or get him past the back lines and he hits Nexus, he consumes powder kegs and deals 7 to all enemies, and it probably wins the game outright. We'll give him 6 as a combo piece. He gives you 1 buff of +1 spell damage. It's a 5/5 overwhelm that gives you +1 spell damage 1 time. That seems decent. That seems fine. It's an overall solid card. Gangplank seems pretty good. But he levels up when you've damaged the enemy Nexus in 5 rounds this game. That's not probably going to happen by the time he comes down. It is realistically very difficult to damage the Nexus on every single round, 1 through 5. Theoretically possible, don't get me wrong, but unlikely. But when he levels up, he is now a 6/6 overwhelm for 5. And when I am summoned, and on round start, summon a powder keg. Wow. Right? This is great. So he's a 6 mana 6. He's 5 mana 6/6. Who makes what's funny is that even combo pieces, right? So just the stat line is a 7. When I am summoned and on every round start, summon a powder keg. Okay. When he attacks, he deals 1 to all enemies and the enemy Nexus. That means it's automatically 2 damage. Now, of course, you can cast a spell in the interim and consume the powder kegs, don't get me wrong, but right, you play him on, let's say you play him on defense on 5. He is summoned, he summons a powder keg. It goes to round 6, round starts, He summons a second powder keg. He now attacks. That is 3 to everything. And by the way, right, that skill is going to resolve pre-combat. Well, okay, pre-fighting mid-combat, which means his overwhelm is going to hit over whatever he killed or whatever he weakened and get more damage to the face. It is also going to be a guaranteed Nexus Strike, which means all your plunder cards care. This is absolutely incredible. This has huge plunder synergy. This is an overall amazing card. Gangplank 2 seems phenomenal. Now, leveling him up may well be difficult. It may well be difficult, but this guy is so good. If you can find ways to plunder reliably and get him on offense by round 6, he's going to trigger all your other plunder conditions. He's going to deal 2 damage to everything. Just remove the board outright. You will be so far ahead if you get a level 2 Gangplank. You're going to be in an amazing spot. And he's tough, right? Like, he's a solid 5 mana 5/5, which is generally hard to kill. He's fairly easily a 5 mana 6/6, which is wonderful. It's very, very, very good. Next up is Petty Officer. When you play me, summon a powder keg. Or a random 1-cost ally from any faction. And I believe it's a play effect because it asks you. It is going to pop up and say, hey, would you rather get a powder keg or a random 1-drop from any faction? And I believe the game says any faction when it really means it. So random otherwise is within faction. I thought it was region, but I guess it's faction. Summon a powder keg or a random 1-cost ally. So, okay. So it's a 3 mana 3/1 that like summons a 2/1 for you, right? The average 1-drop is I mean, actually half decent in this game. I'm going to assume it's going to summon a random 1-cost ally. It doesn't say follower, by the way. So based on wording, this can summon Fizz or Teemo. It would say follower if it meant follower, or the text is incorrect. Not that you really need a Teemo, not that you super need a Fizz, but it would be a better card. So it's a 3 mana 3/1 that summons a 2/1. So it's kind of a 3 mana 5/2. I'm okay with giving it a 5. I think it's okay to give it a 5. This is very good for Zoo, right? This slams multiple units onto the board. This seems solid. By the way, remember we had 1-drop synergy up there a while ago where you played it and it gave all of your 1-cost units everywhere +1/+0. So this is retroactively helpful. Powder kegs, not that it really matters. Wait, powder kegs are down here. Powder kegs are 0 drops. So they do not get buffed by this, just so you know. But yeah, I mean, this card seems pretty decent. As far as synergy is concerned, sure, extra powder keg is never bad. It's probably not great. I don't think we ever go really much higher than this. It's probably only a 6, but a solid card. I can see it being played. Maybe I almost want to go 7 because I think it is a good guy. I think it is a good aggro card. I think it is good for that. All right, 1 mana 2/2. So it's Cythria plus Plunder. Make me a 3/3. And it's a 1-drop, right? So again, we have ideas of like playing the 0 mana hit Nexus, drop this guy down. Remember in the last video we talked about having our 0 mana 3/2s. This is a 1 mana 3/3, right? We just shoot the Nexus twice. Jagged Butcher comes down. The 3/2s come down for free. We swing for 1,000,000. I mean, this is automatically at least a 2/2 and frequently a 3/3. Yeah, I mean, how good is a 1 mana 3/3? We don't really play middle Cythria, right? We don't really play the 4-drop 3/3 Cythria, who frequently becomes a 0 or 1 mana 3/3. We don't tend to care about that card very much. At least I don't think so. I like her in Expeditions a lot, but we don't seem to see her a ton in Constructed. I don't also really care about a like round 4 1 mana 3/3. I also don't really care about that. But it is a 1-drop, which means it gets buffed by all the 1-drop synergy. That's good. It's a 2/2 to pull out with your like the Ionian Allegiance unit. That's still there. That's pretty solid. It's fine. Just not in love with it, right? Let's give this a 6. It's cool. It's decent. It's a body. Like realistically, a Bilgewater deck could just like play this as a 2/2, and then look, if they have to top deck it later on down the line, it becomes a 3/3, it's fine. It's a fine card. I think I have to give it a 6 because it is above average, but yeah, I think we go like this. I think it's fine. There's powder kegs we talked about before. And then here we have the Dreadway deckhand. When I'm summoned, summon a powder keg. So it is a 2-mana 2/2, which is automatically a 4. It creates a powder keg, which is, I think, not enough to make it a 5. I would not put summon a powder keg as worth a stat point. But in a powder keg liking deck, it makes your spells a bit bigger, right? It lets you Mystic Shot for like 6 or something. It lets your Nexus Strike deal more to the Nexus. Now, keep in mind, right? Powder kegs do not, in and of themselves, strike the Nexus. The thing has to strike the Nexus by itself in order to hit the Nexus for more. So this helps your Nexus Strike effects do more damage. If you're going to Mystic Shot face or something, you could do more damage with them. If you're going to cast a Withering Wail, the Withering Wail is going to be a lot better. That's quite good. But this, I think, in and of itself doesn't do that much. I could easily see this card being skipped. And a lot of it is because you play this card and they just challenge the powder keg and kill it, and you're like, oh, I got nothing. You cannot block on purpose with the powder keg. They have to challenge it themselves. That step, when they challenge the powder kegs, you play your spell and you burn it. But again, they can force you to burn your spell and chug through your powder kegs really quickly because they can get rid of your keg. So I'm not a huge fan of this. I don't think it's that incredible. Now, what's interesting is Parley. Parley is a 1-mana slow spell. I believe it's Gangplank spell. Deal 1 to anything. And if this kills what it's attacking, deal 1 to the enemy Nexus. Now, Parley, remember the wording on powder keg, deal 1 to anything. You can Parley your powder keg. All your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. So it'll say your spells and skills deal 4 extra damage. And I believe, and I could be wrong, you can shoot your powder kegs, pop them. Yes, it will die, but it's okay. Parley is going to inherit the +4 damage and hit Nexus. I'm not certain that that is true, but it would surprise me if it wasn't. Because that is, like, if you play League of Legends, parlaying your barrels is the intended gameplay pattern of Gangplank. So now, of course, you would like to parlay their 2/1 and kill it and then hit Nexus. So hey, that's how that's going to work. But if you just shoot your own barrels, great. That is you can obviously just hit their Nexus in the first place anyway, because you can hit anything. You can hit Nexus, but you can hit the enemy. You can hit your barrels for it as well if there was a reason to. And maybe there's really not, because you can shoot the Nexus regardless. And the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm like, wait, this actually doesn't matter at all. But it's thematically cool. Also, I guess it's worth pointing out that powder kegs take up a spot on your bench. So if you need room, you can shoot your barrels to get them out of the way. So is probably a good card. It's 1-mana slow, deal 1. That's not very good, right? That's maybe like here. Actually, we'll put it at 3. Because even though it's slow, there's not a lot of ways to ping. And ping a unit is good. Now it's slow, but it only costs 1, which is really valuable. And if it happens, this is the cool thing, right? Is you can choose to pass on 1 as Bilgewater. Your opponent plays, Omen Hawk, or they play Fleet Feather Tracker, and you go Parley. You get Nexus Strike. You're not going to plunder this round because you can't play anything else for 1, but you have hit their Nexus on round 1, which means you have helped level up Swain for 2 XP. You've leveled up Gangplank for 1. You've leveled up Sejuani for 1. It is a spell, so it's helped, Lee Sin and Fizz and all those things. This seems good, right? This is a great card. I actually kind of want to give it a 5. I think it's a good card overall. I guess I would be okay having this card. Now, it might get gummed up in my hands sometimes, but I think I'm okay having this card once in a while, even if I'm not playing Plunder. Now, to be clear, I'm not grabbing 5s for my deck if I'm just like building a deck. I'm grabbing 7s and 8s. But this is a good card overall. I like it a lot. Alrighty, we did it. We have gone through the next 30 cards. It took us only an hour. Good job. I like these champions a lot. I think Gangplank 2 is sick. I think Nautilus is sick. I think Fizz is fine. I have a hard time really valuing what a 1-mana unit should do, but I think he's okay. We'll be back next time with the final champions and probably the rest of the cards. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.